The 1970s was a significant time for Hawaiians. Struggles were erupting when we made efforts to correct long-standing injustices. Abuses of land and cultural rights were at the forefront of our awareness, and we were determined to stand our ground. We had awakened to the vision that our political voice and the struggle to keep our culture relevant in contemporary times were the most important things for our people.
Back in when we were homeless to our own land, back in when we were homeless to our own spirit, there was no hope back in, there was no dreams prior to stuff like the 70s. Fundamentally, if you're Hawaiian, your expectation of society was not as good as other people's expectations. You're expected to die younger, you're expected to make less money, you're expected to do worse in school, you're expected more of you will be in prisons than others, all that whole stuff.
History has shown in many Native cultures that the path to a better future comes by following in the wake of the ancestors. Polynesians had migrated to Hawaii, traveling vast distances of ocean in strong voyaging canoes, using ancient traditions of celestial navigation. The art of canoe building and navigation had been nearly forgotten in Hawaii and Polynesia with the introduction of modern ships and instruments. During the period now known as the Hawaiian Renaissance, a few men decided it was time to resurrect this ancient knowledge.
My own personal interest was in rebuilding what I saw to be the central object of Polynesian culture. No culture can persist without its objects. When an object is lost, then the memory of it becomes vague and distorted, and eventually becomes just a fable. So my thought is by rebuilding the object that I consider to be the central object of Polynesian culture. Why central? Because were it not for that object, there would be no Polynesians today, right? So that, how central can you get?
What we have to do is, since the canoes are gone, the navigators are dead, is rebuild the canoes, relearn the navigation, and then sail, make navigated voyages between the islands.
Ben had been working on that same idea for years too. Had built an alihia, a smaller double-hulled classically Hawaiian canoe, which we use as a training vessel.
We start working together. That's when he was drawing canoes. And then finally we said, let's do it.
Herb Kane, a native Hawaiian artist, Ben Finney, a California anthropologist, and Tommy Holmes, a renowned waterman, formed the Polynesian Voyaging Society.
I zeroed in on those features of canoe design, which by their wide distribution throughout Polynesia must have been the most ancient. So using those particular features of design, I did a drawing for Hokulea. And then finally, when everyone agreed on my third drawing, I sat down and did the construction drawings. In 1975, we launched, and in the summer I took it around the islands on its maiden voyage. It was a feeling of triumph in getting it into the water, and she looked so beautiful on the water. It was just as most of us had envisioned her. So yes, it was quite a great moment. Sailing to Tahiti and back was a dream that we wanted to see fulfilled, but it was not my primary concern. My primary concern was that the canoe be accepted by the Hawaiian people. People just came and sat all around and just looked at the canoe. They didn't ask to come aboard. They didn't make a great noise. They just came and sat and looked at the canoe all day long, well into the night. They were communicating with the canoe. The canoe was saying something to them.
There was this one guy, and he kept looking down at me, and he put his hand out and said, "I think you belong on this boat. Come." And I did. I reached up, I grabbed his hand, he pulled me on the canoe, and I've been on ever since.
We saw Hokulea come around the corner, and I anchored right next to my trimaran. Couldn't believe it, man. My boat was like my girlfriend, yeah. I could feel that I was going to leave her for something else. They asked me to come on board. Well, it was awesome. Get to sail, get to feel her, ride the waves and see how well she could point, and just like pulling on the sheets and oh wow, this unreal. It works. The Hawaiian canoe actually really works.
A huge awakening happened, and things, and you could see it in the faces of the Hawaiians when we sailed from place to place.
While they had a vessel that reflected the design of the ancients, they could not sail in the way of the ancients. There was no one who could teach them the art of traditional celestial navigation. The traditional navigators had a sophisticated system of sailing by the stars, using the heavens, the waves, winds, and other natural clues to fix positions and determine which way to sail. An exhaustive search through Polynesia was frustrating and turned up no viable candidates. Eventually, they learned about a navigator from the tiny atoll of Satawal in Micronesia named Mau Piailug. He was considered an exceptional navigator who came from a culture of navigators dating back hundreds of years. In his tradition, he was recognized as a master, a Po navigator. In Satawal, navigators were chosen at birth. The young boys were tutored by their grandfathers according to oral traditions that came from generations before. Their maps to new lands were found in the skies, and they were guided by a compass of stars found only in the heavens. They learned the stars, the currents, the winds, developing an intuitive understanding of the cosmos and a deep trust, respect, and understanding of the sea.
Tutotawari 1973 yung meeting no iswa sene ora mangi berferi Korea berferi apa kira Hawaiian le ende to berserak fare fiung rori fare we non de pongene Mike Mukoi era peace call war seton ha mo ba alarer we Rakka besar navigator, we even Arab. Armasia matter, Iman Grim navigator. I told him about the project. I could hardly finish talking, and he let go with a barrage of words. He said, "You have to do this. Of course, you have to do this. How can Polynesians live without sailing?"
Mau Piailug agreed to navigate the Hawaiian canoe Hokulea on her maiden voyage to Tahiti. Mau would navigate in the traditional way, using only his knowledge of the heavens and the ocean. There would be no compass, no maps, no Western navigational instruments.
We're in Snug Harbor. There's a big circle of people sitting around, and Mao was in the circle, and I don't remember who it was, but I was in the circle, kind of just sitting there. Had never talked to him yet. And someone said, "Hey Mao, where's the Southern Cross?" And Mao looks up and he goes, "Over there, behind his back." So I broke out of the circle. I ran all the way down the docks till I got past all the lights, and right there was a Southern Cross behind his back. And I said, "This is a man of magic."
He started teaching us how to lash the canoe. to start to learn the stars from him, and it was real different. So he would do this thing where we'd be sitting down, on the pier, put you over there, he'd put me over there, he'd put another person there, and he'd situate you, and he'd teach us a dance, and he'd sing. And we start to dance, and he'd tell us how to move. Well, what he was teaching us was how stars move relative to each other, and things as they rise and set, and things. And your motion, you are a star, and your motions depict the movement of the star.
Mao was that one that was able to come back to our culture and help us to remember that these things that were magic to us, to watch him do all these things, and they're still magical to us, to be at the level that he's at, he's helped us to reconnect again.
If I wanted to know anything about the stars, the ocean, about waves, and he would just like, he would just give me the answer right there. It was just like, and it went right through him to me, and then it represented who he was and everybody he learned from, the past and everything. So it's like a living ancestor that you could finally talk to.
It took an extraordinary effort to prepare Hokulea and the crew for the voyage to Tahiti. The canoe would have to withstand 40 days on the open ocean, had to be provisioned with food and water, and have whatever might be needed in the event of any emergency. The crew of novices needed to train for this long journey so that they could handle the physical rigor of a 2,500-mile voyage.
A great deal was being said among the paddling clubs that those guys aren't going to get that canoe built. We got it built. And they said, those guys aren't going to sail. That canoe won't sail. Well, we sailed it. And then they said, well, it won't go to Tahiti.
Raindrops, they hamper my vision.
On May 1st, 1976, Hokulea began her epic voyage, a 2,500-mile journey from Hawaii to Tahiti.
Blow makani, shout tribulation, carry us down to our destination. Oh, wiki wiki.
I want to sail to Tahiti. I don't want to fly to Tahiti. I want to see it come out of the ocean. I want to fish it out of the sea. So I knew I wanted to sail there. I never knew it would be on Hokulea.
Looking up, they all make us hikers. Hokulea, Hokulea, star of gladness, you're the happy star. Oh, Hokulea, star of gladness. Stand beside me and be my friend. Be my friend. Make me smile and laugh again, yes. Hokulea, Hokulea, you're the star of gladness. You're the happy star.
Mao had that certainty about him. He was just so above petty stuff. And Mao was everything. He wasn't just a navigator. I mean, in our canoe family, Hokulea is the mother and Mao's the father. He was our doctor, taught us 101 ways of using a coconut. It wasn't until I got on a canoe that I really understood what a coconut was for and how important it was to our people.
He stayed awake for days and days and days, and never even like dozed. I made sure that I was there all the time just to do whatever I could. On that voyage, we got to experience what it was like in the old days. The plants had to stay alive, the pig had to make it and be healthy enough to make the voyage.
There were Hawaiians on board who sailed for cultural reasons, and there were scientists who sailed as part of an experiment in cultural anthropology. As the voyage wore on and fatigue set in, tension grew between the crew members.
I was doing something very Hawaiian and very ancient. And I didn't want anything to interrupt that. And at times, that's what it became, an interruption. These things They were, to me, unnecessary.
Minua Maisarak, minua 1976. Minua Roka Samoridi Wana Hukuleri, similar to Ipuanang, similar to Ipupo, Minda Mapakan. We ran like so or Chekiwana. Sormitaiko. Misalnya ya misal apa ngomong saya di Rufari udah perisara ke Purikra. Mendengar ramai kita. Ya si pergi na perisara ke ni enggak. Sorsara ke ni malah koi yang ni.
The differences between the scientific and cultural aspects of the voyage intensified until it culminated in physical conflict near the end of the journey.
They just weren't well enough used to each other, motivated in the same ways, didn't have the objectives of the voyage that clearly fixed in their minds.
After 31 days at sea, Hokulea made landfall in a glorious arrival witnessed by more than 17,000 Tahitians. It was as if Hokulea had breathed life into all of the Polynesian myths and legends about ancient seafaring. The pathway to Tahiti had been reopened, and something long dormant began to stir in the hearts and minds of all Polynesians.
Couldn't keep people off, and the people on board were like the mayor, the governor, and his wife, and all their family come first. It's like all the kids. We couldn't keep the kids off, and everybody's dancing, and it's just you couldn't stop it.
While all of Tahiti feted Hokulea and her crew, Mau, disheartened by his crew's undisciplined behavior during the voyage, slipped out of Tahiti, leaving his students tape-recorded instructions on how to return to Hawaii. His disappointment was so bitter, he vowed never to sail with the Hawaiians again, and the crew was forced to rely on Western navigational instruments to make its way back to Hawaii. 2 years later, the Polynesian Voyaging Society embarked on its second voyage to Tahiti. 5 hours after leaving Oahu in near gale-force winds, and just 12 miles south of the Hawaiian island of Molokai, Hokulea began to take on water and quickly capsized.
The canoe would not have capsized off Molokai had they waited for a day. But everyone was there. It was organized. The governor was there for the send-off. The press was there for the send-off. The canoe was heavily loaded. It was windy, very windy, stormy condition out there, gale force winds off Molokai, and the canoe turned over.
The choice not to go wasn't a choice. We had to go. And that's dangerous.
With their canoe swamped, a terrified crew clung to the overturned hulls through the night. As rescue began to seem more and more improbable and tragedy increasingly inevitable, crew member Eddie Aikau volunteered to go get help. He paddled away on a rescue surfboard. Eddie, a city and county lifeguard based on the north shore of Oahu, had saved dozens of lives in the ocean and was renowned for his courage and skill. After 72 hours at sea, the overturned vessel was spotted by a Hawaiian Airlines pilot, and the crew was rescued by the Coast Guard. Eddie Aikau was never seen again.
You know, he couldn't stand Hokulea being upside down and just being destroyed. And it's not just the physical piece of the canoe, but it was Eddie instinctually knew, I think maybe better than maybe all, that the promise of Hokulea, the potential of Hokulea, and that what he needed to go rescue was the future of the power of that canoe. He knew that Hokulea was not just a symbol, but it was the reality of carrying hope and healing for people that deserve it and need it.
It could have been the whole end of the dream of this being taken up by Hawaiian civilization was in jeopardy. You know?
There were others that stepped forward in extraordinary leadership roles, and the one that was most important to me was my father. His question to me, Nainoa, you want to navigate, who's your teacher? To be honoring the traditions, to be true to the required sacred knowledge and skill base that's needed, you got to go back to the source.
Mao had retreated back to his quiet life on Satawal, but he too was haunted by failure and the sense that he had left his job in Hawaii undone. He had been unable to share his sacred knowledge beyond his shores.
I know I has to go there and sit, kneel at his feet, and earnestly request, beg almost, be a student.
Mao in his tape said he's not going to come back. That was absolutely clear. He's not going to come back to Hawaii. But we also know that if he doesn't, it's over. So that put me on an airplane. We sat on a white sand beach on a driftwood log, and his head was really low looking at the ground, and he knew the story of Eddie. He was extraordinarily sad. You know, I just had a comment, and the question was, you know, Mom, we don't really need you to navigate and find Tahiti for us. You need to help us find it for ourselves.
Manoa come see me in Saipan. He told me, you come back to Hawaii. We like to learn from you about the navigator.
Mao, as we understand, at that time was one of 6 of the master navigators left in Micronesia, therefore on Earth. So he knew it wasn't just about us. It was the hope and the pride that Hokulea should be carrying. And I think that's why he probably came back.
The navigators were losing prominence within the Micronesian culture. And he saw very clearly that his own stature as a navigator would increase as a result of his association with Hokulea. But Mao did not see this for reasons of personal self-aggrandizement, but for the reason that he wanted to see the art of navigation as it was practiced in Satawal to continue.
Gai sa ura king ya polite kapung merde anas semadi dai mena emiti pari kapung merde permilika kirman katsubu kure metaka fasir kor farar munam puika rokagare yorgure regar saibu irman rokasor regar saibu irabu pari tenap sefei Rome, roka rong merpari mersedap, merpara pirmat. Nang isa fendi buka diorgat, simulai buka bo. Iba murid ya agar pipi, to akar agar itu warparika, ya agar ke murid itu ya mereka. Ya murid itu migra, pikir air padi. Ya mangi sefari berkabung, ya kabung murid, buka ya free biar minar buka igar warir wah mau itu, igar aja gini ora, murid itu migar. Iba mangi pipi hari buka igar pengamuan. Saya pengarah betul ibu mata fatalor. Biroka rezeki mereka, ikarwai roh betul mata roh dipari. Seorang minta kurir, seorang semangir pada minta, semangir pada minta. Ibu, benda yang pada tiba-tiba buka murid, buka rigi so, mana mereka seorang kurir kira. Ramai orang seorang muter ready. Altieri nol seorang muter gede, seorang muter ready film. Ia kira air sama nol berkabungan dia reka. Ngai sudah muter gora, bukan ayaman. Ayaman itu orang muter ka. Ia pun berada bukan ikut.
Nainoa and other crew members spent 2 intense years learning the body of knowledge Mao had to offer. They learned the way young boys of Satawal learn, observing and feeling the subtleties of nature while on the ocean. They learned what it felt like to have their sailing vessels come alive, how to read a canoe's moods, and to intuit interaction with the winds and the sea. In 1980, Hokulea set sail again for Tahiti. This time the navigator was Hawaiian, and he carried with him the hope and pride of his people. Mao sailed not as a navigator, but a teacher.
The 1980 voyage, he was really just like really kicked back and silent and kind of stayed away from everything, which is such an honor and respect for the disciplines of a navigator, you know. Is because doesn't matter how great he is, he would never interfere or take over leadership or anything like that. That was a clean line that you never passed.
1980, they come with me on the Hokulea, but something broke on the canoe. Then I fixed in the ocean. Is they come watch me. That's why maybe now I'm thinking that they never forget because they know. When I fix the canoe in the ocean, they watch me.
The voyage was a success. Landfall in Tahiti set the stage for the expansion of traditional voyaging throughout the Polynesian Triangle.
The first trip is a little bit problem, but I don't know. Me, I think the first try the sail in a ocean, somebody's scared and make a little bit crazy, but not too much. This trip is everything good. No problem.
Good sail.
Yeah, oh yeah, good.
If it wasn't for him, I don't think we would have progressed as far as we have. You know, so all that has been done so far, and up until the time when we have to hand it over to somebody else, is thanks to him, to Mao.
Yeah.
You know.
In 1985, Hokulea returned to Tahiti and continued on to Samoa, Tonga, Rarotonga, and Aotearoa. And in 1999, Hokulea sailed to Rapa Nui, the single most isolated landmass on the planet. It was a wonderful time, inspiring the training of new navigators and the construction of more voyaging canoes across Polynesia. For the Polynesian Voyaging Society, it was a time to realize dreams. 25 years of relearning navigation and voyaging reunited the great nation of Polynesia and inspired renewed interest in other cultural practices, language, dance, traditional arts. This expansion of voyaging throughout Polynesia brought newfound respect for Hawaiians. Once viewed as culturally lost, Hawaiians were now at the forefront of cultural revival. Literally and figuratively, the art of traditional navigation is helping native peoples throughout Polynesia find their way in a modern world that does not always value traditional practices.
Happy because now I know the people here is they learn a little bit from me. That's why they start try again. But me, I never go with them, but my bodies feel good because I know they get a little bit navigator, but maybe they continue sometime, but better.
The cultural rejuvenation failed to reach the distant shores of Micronesia. There, Western cultural attitudes continued to threaten traditional lifestyles and values.
Verngangero narang iya udah keseng itu dia ada itu. Ya verbabang di rokeng ya. Eu pergi nan mulwar rem salam di kafadar buka. Kira wis bersih di rokeng rede. Arman di rokok. Kira no rokok. Ini kira aso. Kira wis bersih di rokok nggak perlu ti riayat. Era pun ngau safe, ngau kiri rungukan. So piri duai, di kapi di faring sebuah terara pun ngau. Isuri mita pun ngang sebasil tapun. Kira apa je putai jak sama tapun. Ang di po wala. Upor ito namin lang ya sino ngani rubo. Musi po ngawra rin Amerika. Mo sa mo re Amerika bisa gerbuga. Topot mergere po situ marwakawa. Mo kira to kira mara putar tarwasar.
That's why voyaging is important, because it is hard. I mean, why wouldn't you just break out the GPS and get from point A to point B if that were the voyage, if that were the journey? And get a young child's mind to only look at the box to define its world and disconnect them from nature, from culture, from heritage.
The thing about culture is that people who have lost their past become a lost people. In complete acceptance of the modern culture, they should not lose the cultural past that has given them the guidance that has made them successful. And without that past, we are simply rudderless.
Clay Bertelman had started this movement to build a canoe for Mao.
My brother Clay, he really wanted it for Mao, really badly. It was like a small thing that we could muster up for the greatness that he shared. It was something.
Clay committing to it, and all of us understanding that with Clay, that no matter what, he was going to do it, whether the materials were there or not, or whether the money was there or not, but that somehow he'd find a way to do it.
It took us over 5 years of working. It was hard just because, for one thing, it came at a time when we lost Clay.
When he passed, I think for a lot of us, we understood that with his passing, his commitment was still for us to carry it through.
It's a tremendous gift to a man that's worthy of that kind of gift. Because that canoe is gonna go beyond Mao's life. It'll teach a whole new generation of Micronesian seafarers. And we expect nothing back because we've been given so much already.
I don't know what else we could have done. Things that would demonstrate the appreciation we have for what he's given us.
With Clay's passing, Mao assumed responsibility of overseeing the construction of his canoe, the Alingano Maisu. But there was another reason for Mao to stay in Hawaii. He had been stricken with diabetes, and his failing health required a level of medical attention not available to him in Micronesia. If Mao remained in Hawaii, dialysis would enable him to prolong his life, but he would never be able to return to Satawal or witness the arrival of Maisu on the sands of his birth. For every navigator, no landfall is more precious than arriving safely home, and so it is for Mao. He returned to Satawal to receive the Maisu, leaving his son Cesario to sail in his place. Alingano Maisu, accompanied by Hokulea and the escort boat Kamahele, left Hawaii to travel west for 45 days to her new home, Satawal. It was the first voyage into the northwestern Pacific for all vessels. It was also the highest honor Mao's students could pay him.
Raindrops, they hamper my vision. Falling down in cutting incision in my mind while we sail away our time.
To see her on the water was really, really special for me. More than the fact that she's fast, she's strong. And you know, she's got all these different personalities. She's got this deep sense of strength. I think that kind of surprised everybody. She's got this drive to always want to move, and that's my dad.
It's the first voyage we sailed with multiple canoes where the canoes had to stay together. Beyond the physical requirements of staying together, the symbolism behind that, what I think is so key, that the voyage transcends the organizations. It transcends separate communities. It even transcends nations. Because now you're talking about Micronesia and Hawaii coming together.
Mao told us in the beginning to stay together. You know, that For us as people, we need to stay together. For the success of what we need to do, stay together.
2, 3,
He consistently said that throughout the whole process of the building of Mysore. No matter what, you folks stick together. And so for me, I hope that we're all listening to that.
In this we pray, Lord, please show us the way. Star of gladness.
Sailing together in the largest ocean on the planet was no simple task, and challenges would be part of the long voyage until the very end. Approaching Satawal, the crews encountered a fierce storm, yet another test of the knowledge passed on to them from Mom.
Maybe we should protect this guy by tying it down as much as we can and protect this, because it could be raining for a while. But we're just going to keep going. We've probably got 200 miles to go. Up a little bit, blue line. I think we hope to and get centered for the island in the morning. Everybody, we can talk to each other, communicate, do whatever logistical planning, and I think everybody should just really start to get spiritually ready for tomorrow.
That day we saw Satawal coming out of the ocean, and it wasn't a vociferous moment, it was a quiet moment. It's like, there's your heaven, you know, you come home.
Us going to Satawal was an awesome thing. It was awesome to go there and see the island, meet the people, see old friends, and really take you back in time. It made us appreciate even more, you know, what we were trying to recover.
Hokulea finally embraced the sands of Satawal, the source of the navigational knowledge that guided her more than 100,000 miles throughout the Pacific.
The day that we arrived there, in my mind, that might have been the most significant island on the planet.
The canoe was just the vessel to be able to get us there, so that we could all experience for a short amount of time what it feels like to go back in time.
As the Hawaiians arrive with their gift, Satawal is bustling in preparation for the anticipated visitors.
They harvest from the sea and they harvest from the land. They're not surviving, they're thriving.
We come here today to present your gift, Alingana Maisu. Behind this gift
thousands of people, people from islands of the ocean. The people you see here represent a lot of people, and blessings and aloha from Hawaii.
Our chiefs on Satawal and people of Satawal, that we are thankful for this gift. The property now that is for all of us, people of Satawal. We cannot return like gift, but I like to request that the least we can do is give the po to those that are recognized among our friends from Hawaii.
The highest honor given to a navigator in Satawal is to become Po, Master Navigator. The ritual was implemented for the first time in over 50 years as part of the exchange. Mao decided to honor 16 navigators with Po. Included were 5 Hawaiians: Nainoa Thompson, Shorty Bertelman, Bruce Blankenfeld, Chad Baibayan, and Chad Paishon. Mao's son Cesario was also recognized as a master navigator. Now in the twilight of his life, Mao presided over the ceremony that would formally confer his knowledge to a younger generation and invigorate the ancient tradition.
I would like to offer on behalf of all of us that are here today that with the deepest humility and the deepest appreciation, we are very, very honored to be here today with all of you within this ceremony of Po.
What the Po is about is the navigators accepting the kuleana of being the steward of that art. That you're a teacher, you're a caretaker, you have to recruit new people in so the art can keep on living. So we're faced with the same challenges that Mao is faced with here on the island.
You could just feel the energy and the importance and, the real seriousness of what, he was trying to pass on.
For Mao, it's like he's passing the torch on, which is like he's always holding a torch for us, yeah. But now he's giving it away. So that was big for me.
It wasn't us giving something to him. Basically, he was doing it again. He was giving us something again. So it was just, he's still the teacher. He's still, being the master.
O Hawaii o ke ave mau ia kama moloka inu ia hina o ahu o kaku hi hewa kawa i o mano kalangi poni i hau kapale no na moku ka ula ku hai mo o i ke i kanani o ka ina he pale no o ka ula no Hawaii ni ho atuhi tuhi puone no apa maulua Hawaii
These two canoes are connected by shared genealogies, but will now seek out their own destinies. Maisu, under the leadership of Cesario, will sail between the atolls of Micronesia as a floating classroom to engage future generations in the teachings of the past. Hokulea will embark on further adventures, carrying the newly bestowed responsibility of Huo. Although physically separated, these two canoes, and all those throughout the Pacific, remain spiritually bonded by the teachings of Papa Mau.
Ya, ini saya kira baga kau berapa hari nunggu ikan air orang kapung, kau berapa hari nunggu berakere agus berer mereka. Ika apa ni kira free pun, ika roll ferker free pun, betul mina ira free ni sebutak. Ya apa kira. Porque no me lo recuerdo. Ina mo guys solo na puya meno. Ngare mo po. Ya mi fangar mi up feram na po para po. Minan eno minan ena pro. Bugaya ko po. O na mo yan Micronesian arroz. Sardo ye po el ferry po. Muchiti el fare pe tinga ni ru. Tinga ni ap. Lang ni pana ko. Sardo ar po. Mangi po pa mo was ferry. Era muito por meira. No, pang ni pila mende. Tete pe po yo ay arit mataror. Yung ariner misamer bani rubo. Awara pa itu fay mo ra pakabong. Mereka mo arap itu masang kilo.
All I remember when I left him, I didn't know what to say, and he didn't know what to say, and he was just trying to kind of push me out the door because everybody was gone. They were waiting for me, but I just didn't know how to leave. And when I looked back, all I could see was this silhouette of a single man in that very dark house. I knew it had to be really, really sad. So I just stopped and said, I ain't going. And I turned around and ran back to the house. Then I sat down with him again, not knowing how you say goodbye again. I said, when we learn navigation from you, are we learning you? And he looked at me and said, yes. Then I said, so as long as we teach, then you'll always be with us. And he said, yes. Then I said, okay, I'll see you soon.
Star of gladness, with our bow, your house slides through the sea. Guide Hokulea, Lord, we ask you please. In this we pray, Lord, please show us the way. Hokulea, star of gladness, you're the happy star. Oh, Hokulea.